Hi, everybody. Lindsey here. Write down any notes and add this information into your notes so you can have it to study in the future. Let's get started with question number 1. Which of the following is the best example of a learned behavior in animals? A monkey using tools to access food. B, a goose migrating in the spring. C, a rabbit hiding in the grass when startled. Or D, a bear hibernating in the winter. So I've got learned behavior. That's my key right here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that part. If I'm talking learned behavior, I also have to talk about inherited behavior. So which one is which? So a quick overview. Learned is something we learn. Anything that an animal learns, it's what they have seen happen. It's modeled by a parent. So a learned behavior is going to be modeled. Inherited is something they're born with. So let's go through each one of these options and kind of decide, is it learned or is it something they just are given by way of genes from their parents? So a monkey using tools to access food. Is that something they learn? That's a possibility. I want to actually write maybe a little check mark right there. I might like that one. How about a goose migrating in the spring? Is that learned or is that something that's innate with them that happens? That's a possibility. I don't know about that one. Let's move on to the next one. A rabbit hiding in the grass when startled. I wonder about that one. What do you think? A rabbit hiding in the grass when startled. Is that just going to be something that they do? Or is it going to be something that they have seen happen? That's another possibility. Or a bear hibernating in the winter. That one for sure is very much so innate. That's what bears do. That is what happens over time. Yes, it's modeled and they watch it, but they know to do it by this changing of the seasons. So a goose migrating in the spring. Let's use that same idea with the bear. In this one is the changing of the seasons. The goose also is going to want to change its location. So I'm going to go ahead and say for each one of these two, no and no. Let's talk about the rabbit hiding in the grass when startled. Animals know about predators, and that is just what they know to do. So because of the fact that that is something that they know they have to do, it is modeled. They do watch it, but it's not something that is taught to them. It's innate with them. So in this case, I'm going to venture to say C is not going to be my answer option. A learned behavior would be a monkey using tools to access food. Let's check and double check. Nicely done. A great job. So a monkey using tools to access food is going to be learned behavior in an animal. This is going to be a good one. In roses, red flowers are dominant over white flowers. Keep that in mind. A heterozygous red flowering rose is mated with a purebred white-colored rose. What percentage of their offspring will have the genotype RR? Wow. Let's talk about how we can digest this one. So here's what I do know. And I've got a lot of notes for this one, so let's kind of think about how we can write that one down. Here's what I do know. And I want to highlight what I do know. Red flowers are dominant over white flowers. That is going to be key for me when I'm assigning my different alleles to that one, as I want to decide. My red flower is dominant over the white flower. So the question stem already states the heterozygous red flowering rose is going to be mated with the purebred white colored rose. What percent? So is it A, 50%, B, 75%, C, 100%, or D, 25%? So in this case, when we think about how we're going to do this, the best way to put our thoughts on paper is to create a Punnett Square with what information I have, which will give you an answer of a percentage of chance. So just so you know what a Punnett Square is, I'm going to write this out right here for you. A Punnett Square is going to be your probability of a genetic outcome. It's what could be, not exactly what will happen, but it's what could be. So it's your probability of a genetic outcome. It's what could B. We know at any point in time, genes from a long time ago can kind of come out over time and change what we would expect to happen. And you can use this for any scenarios, eye color, hair color. You can use it for a whole lot of things when we're talking about humans and animals. So what do I have here? I've got a heterozygous red flowering rose. Now in my head, just so you know, the heterozygous red flowering rose is going to be one that has actually inherited different genes along the way. So I'm going to write that up here because it's going to be mated with a purebred white colored rose. That's a homozygous, and that is going to be one that actually has the same DNA chain all the way down. So what percent of their offspring will have the genotype RR? Whew, you ready to do this? Here we go. We're going to go ahead and create a square. Ready to create a square for us. And I'm going to put my square over here because I also have to assign my alleles. So here's what I have that I'm going to be working with. One, I'm going to be working with a red flower. So let's write red flower up here. And I know my red flower, because the question sim stated it's dominant, it gets to be the big R. I'm also working with a white flower. That one is going to be a little r because the red flower is more dominant. Ready? Now, what else do I have here? Well, I have a heterozygous red flower. That's the type. And I'm going to call that. And that one is going to be big R, little r. And then I have my homozygous. And that is going to be my little r, RR. That is what your answer is looking for. What percent of their offspring will have the genotype RR? So what do I do with all this information now? Well, I go over here and I put it in my square. This is your Punnett Square. This will help me look at the probability. So with this, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and label my, let's go ahead and make this one red because it is red. I'll make my red over here. And my white will be across the top. I'm going to go ahead and assign green to my white since I can't use white. So there is a 25% chance in each of these boxes. So 25, 25, 25, and 25, which is 100%. This is what gives you your percentages to decide what your genetic outcome will be. So in this case, what I'm going to assign is my, I'm going to actually do this and this. This one is going to be my big R. This box right here will be my little r. And then because my white flower, it's pure homozygous, it's RR, little r, little r. And just in case, I don't want anybody to not be able to see. So I'm going to put this in orange so you can see that's a big R, little r. And this one up here will be little r, little r. There we go. Okay, so this is just like a multiplication chart. What we do is put the two together. We're going to take this column, and move them over together. So the outcome right here is going to be big R, little r. The outcome over here will be big R, little r. And the outcome of the first column with the second row in that first box is going to be little r, little r. And the outcome of the second column, second row is going to be little r again. So our Punnett square is actually very balanced in this case. So what is the likelihood that you're going to get the heterozygous red? You've got a 50% chance that you're going to get a big R, little r. So 50% chance, big R, little r. In the little r column, and that's actually what the answer is looking for in the question sim, what is the percent chance I will get the homozygous white flower, little r, guess what? I have 50% chance of that one as well. So that's kind of how you put together a Punnett square, which will give you the percent of the genetic outcome. In this case, it was a lot of information, The heterozygous red flower is going to be your different genes. The homozygous purebred white is going to be that same set of genes passed on. What is the percent chance I would get an RR? There's our answer right here, 50% chance. I have half the likelihood that I'm going to get that, or half the likelihood that I'm going to get the heterozygous red flowering rose. That's a fun one to do. A lot of information in there. Let's check our answer. We did it. Awesome job. Make sure when you are writing down your notes, you kind of write down that Punnett Square. And if you need to, definitely look more of these up because they're great to explore with how the genes work. The adaptation that will best aid plant survival in an arid environment can be described as which of the following? Broad leaves, green leaves, aerial leaves, or waxy leaves? So what would be the best way to say that you're going to get for a plant to survive in an arid environment? What do we think here? I've got broad, big leaves, green leaves, aerial roots, or waxy leaves. So what I'm thinking is, what information do I have here in this in this question stem to kind of lead me to what I need to know? Well, the environment is going to be very specific. So do I need big leaves, green leaves, aerial roots, so roots that are actually above the ground, or waxy leaves? Let's go ahead and talk about this answer in this case. Your arid environment is your very dry environment. So your waxy leaves will allow the water to stay inside of that leaf, so it doesn't dry out as fast. Broad leaves aren't going to help in this case. It just means bigger leaves. The chance of it drying out is much, much quicker. Green leaves, not necessarily. They're all, leaves are green because that's the color of the chlorophyll in the green plant, your producers. Aerial roots in this case are not necessary, but waxy leaves will allow the water to stay inside in order to compensate for the environment that it's in. When females choose male peacocks with the brightest colored feathers so that the genes for bright features are passed down to male offspring, who also have the better chance of finding a mate and passing down their genes, is an example of what? Is that an acquired trait, a learned behavior, an evolving species, or an adaptation? Okay, so we've got a lot here. It says when females choose the male peacock with the brightest colored flower so that the genes for bright colored flowers are passed down to the male offspring. And just in case you know, when it comes to birds, your male birds are always the most beautiful birds. They're most colorful because that is how they find and attract mates. The better chance of finding and attracting the mate and passing down their genes is an example of, is this a trait that is acquired? Is this a learned behavior? Is this how the species evolves or changes, or is this an adaptation? So let's go ahead and put the answer up here and talk about why this one works in this case. This is an example of how the species evolves or changes. It is not a trait that is acquired. It's not something that listen, the bird is going to be that color based upon the DNA. A learned behavior won't be learned because a learned behavior is something that it will see and then mimic. Evolving species, that's going to be your answers. And an adaptation, this is not necessarily an example of an adaptation to answer the question. So the question is just asking about when females choose males with the brightest color, you're passing it along to your offspring, and it's how the species will change depending on the female that it mates with. So C, evolving species, is going to be your answer in this case. It says ducks have many adaptations. Which adaptation helps the duck move about in the water? Do ducks need webbed feet, brown feathers, yellow bill, or dark eyes? Well, I think you'll see that if you're talking about moving about in the water, web feet is going to be your best way to move about in the water. The brown feathers aren't going to help you. The yellow bill is not going to help as well, and dark eyes either. So web feet is going to be the adaptation that a duck needs to move about more freely in the water.